Well, good morning. He is risen. Not bad, not bad. Let's hear the gospel together from John chapter 20, starting in verse 19. On the evening of that day, the first day of the week, the doors being locked where the disciples were, for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit." Then jumping to verse 24. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." So the disciples, they don't know yet that Christ is risen. They're hiding in a room. The doors are locked. They think the people that came after Jesus, they might come after us. And so they're huddled, they're cowering, they're nervous. Jesus appears in their midst. Shalom, greets them with peace, and they are overjoyed. Everything they hoped is more real and alive than they could possibly imagine. But Thomas, he missed the meeting. We don't know why. They come to him and they say, "Jesus is alive." And he responds, "Unless I see the wounds, I will never believe." And when I read that, I hear some pain in his voice. Guys, just stop. It's been a miserable past few days. I don't need this false hope. I don't need this right now. So in the heart of the celebration of the resurrection, all the excitement, all the joy, Thomas seems like a bit of a downer. He's kind of an Eeyore. He's a bit of a buzzkill. And it can feel strange on Easter to talk about the presence of doubt. It can feel inappropriate, sacrilegious, out of place, and yet it's here in the biblical account. We can't avoid it. And actually, as we see in the story of Easter itself, to speak of truth, of faith truly, we must speak of doubt openly. It's right here. There's something for us to learn. And we don't get much help on this subject from very religious people or very secular people. In religious circles, doubt may not feel like a safe thing to bring up. Don't question. Don't doubt. You may not want to come to certain people with your questions this way. But if you swing to the far secular side, perhaps perpetual doubt and deep skepticism are the only intellectually acceptable options. And the Bible presents us with a much more nuanced view on this. And it's actually only with what the Bible shows us here that doubt is something that we can personally make progress on. So let's continue now, verses 26 to 28, to see how Jesus handles this. 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." The first thing that we see that's kind of taken for granted here is that doubt is a natural part of faith. In the original language here, doubt, it literally means two psyches, two visions. It's like I'm seeing one thing and I'm seeing another thing, and it's disorienting, it's confusing. But we see simply that it can happen to anyone. Thomas walked and talked and ate with Jesus for years, and yet he still wasn't fully sure. And Jesus comes to him. Notice how kind he is. He doesn't say, "How dare you question me? How dare you not believe?" He comes to him. He meets him where he is. He gives him what he needs. Now, okay, to think about doubt, consider the following. Anyone who's ever been in a relationship, or if you're currently in one, is it a good thing to have conflict with your spouse? Oh, wait. No, it's not intrinsically good. It's not something you seek out in and of itself. Happy birthday, good morning, baby, I love you so much. Let me tell you what I really think about your mother. No, we don't seek it out in and of itself, yet it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So the goal is, how can we navigate in a way that's constructive, that's not destructive? How can we be better off because of it? I had someone tell me once, Pastor, I've been married for 3 years, and we haven't had any fights. We don't have any arguments. And I got concerned for that man's safety. I said, I think your wife's going to stab you in your sleep. I think you should keep a cheese grater under your pillow. I don't know. No fights! What are you talking about? So it's not good in and of itself, but it's going to happen. How do we navigate it well? Now bring this back to the topic of faith. What if someone said to you, I've been a Christian for 20 years, never had any doubts, never had any questions? I don't know if that's a strong faith. I don't know if that's an honest faith. I don't know if that's a faith that can handle the hard seasons of life. Because if you live long enough, you're going to bleed. I don't know if that's the faith that can handle hard questions from people as well. What we see simply is that it's par for the course. Paul Tillich, he puts it better than I do. He said that doubt isn't the opposite of faith. It's an element of faith. Thus says Paul Tillich. I like this quote better. Friedrich Buechner says, doubts are the ants in the pants of faith. They keep it awake and moving. But simply put, faith without doubt is hollow. But doubt without faith is hopeless. We simply see that it's going to happen. So what do we do with it? Well, I think before we even take any action with our doubts, with our questions, the first step is to be honest with our doubt. Be honest about our doubt. Thomas was very honest. He was quite upfront. He said, these are my objections. This is what I need. This is what I'm prepared to do. And reflect for a moment, what causes doubt? Where does it come from? As humans, we have heads and we have hearts. We have our cognition and we have our affection, and we have beliefs and we have doubts about beliefs with both of these. So if you ask the question, did Jesus really exist? Did he really walk and talk? Was he really crucified? That's a question of the mind. It's a cognitive question. But if you ask, does Jesus love me? Is he really good? Can I trust him? Can I follow him? That's a question of the heart. I can't explain that to you just on a piece of paper quickly. That's a different kind of question. And our doubts and our beliefs come from a mix of both. It's always a mix of reason as well as personal and social experience. That's just being human. We're not computers on a stick in this way. And when Jesus comes to Thomas, he doesn't say to him, now agree. He says, now believe. He calls to his head and to his heart. Christianity, it isn't just a fact. It isn't just a proposition. The truth of Christianity is a person. You can deal with all the data, but you've got to deal with Jesus. He comes and he says, now believe. So you can think of doubt like this. Doubt is directional. We can doubt toward God, or we can doubt away from God. And it's helpful to know, are we being even intellectually honest about our beliefs? Because maybe I don't want something to be true. Maybe, I hide behind it. I say it's all cognitive, but there's some heart wounds that I need to work through actually as well. And until we admit that, it's hard to make progress on it. Maybe the most honest explanation of this I've seen was from a philosopher. He was not a believer. His name was Thomas Nagel. He taught at Columbia University. He put it like this. I speak from experience. I want atheism to be true, and I'm very uneasy that some of the most intelligent people I know are religious believers. It isn't just that I don't believe in God and naturally hope that I'm right in my belief. It's that I hope there is no God. I don't want there to be a God. I don't want the universe to be like this. I am curious whether there is anyone who is genuinely indifferent as to whether there is a God. Anyone who, whatever his actual belief about the matter, doesn't particularly want either one of the answers to be correct. Nobody is purely objective about this. We deal with the data, but then we need to deal with Jesus. Honesty is the first step. Now that we have been honest about it, recognized it's going to happen. The good news here that we see with Thomas is simply that doubt can lead to stronger faith. How? Isn't doubt the opposite of faith? No, actually. Unbelief is the opposite of faith. Faith is trust. Faith is an act of trust. Trust is earned. We speak about a spouse being faithful or not. And if faith is an active walk, if it's a living relationship, you would expect there to be high points of great celebration and excitement and momentum, and there would be seasons of questioning, seasons of pain, seasons of suffering. You would expect to see both of those there, and the good news is that Jesus meets everyone where they are at. When he comes to Thomas, it's interesting because Thomas isn't convinced about this. He's not sure. He has questions about, did Jesus really rise? Is he really who he said he is? Is he the Messiah who's come? Is he the one to set us free? Is he the one to defeat sin and death? Is he going to restore all things back to God himself? He's not sure. Jesus appears to him and he says, "My Lord and my God." All through the Gospels, people are trying to figure out who Jesus is. Very few people look at Jesus and say, "That's it, you're God." And yet Thomas has his questions. Jesus meets him in them, and it leads him to a profession of faith stronger than he had before. If we had the time, we could talk about Peter, how Jesus meets him when he's out on the waters. Jesus meets him in his doubt. John the Baptist, after preparing the way of the Lord, he's arrested, he goes to prison. And he's not so sure anymore about all this. He writes to Jesus and he says, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we wait for another?" And Jesus meets him there. Or famously, the father who's asking for Jesus to help with his son. He cries out to him, "I believe, help my unbelief." He's so honest. And Jesus is so gentle with them. Today you may be saying, "I've got questions." Great. The good news is that your questions don't disqualify you from the person and work of Jesus. Jude 1:22 says, "Have mercy on those who doubt." Jesus is willing to meet us in our doubt. Are we willing to meet him in ours? And I don't want to make this sound cool. Doubt, real doubt, the kind that's worth talking about in the same breath as faith, is hard. It's painful. It can feel very lonely and isolating. But the good news of the gospel is that it does not have more power than the person and work of Jesus Christ.